Well, it's true that Uncle Sam is always looking for a few good men, but someone he's not looking for anytime soon is Kyle Rittenhouse. What a lot of people don't realize is Kyle Rittenhouse failed his exam to join the Marines so badly that he is banned from ever trying to join up again. And yet people in my part of the world are okay with a kid like that, an inexperienced kid like that, having an assault rifle and playing vigilante. One thing that I've learned is if you want to start an argument in my part of the world faster than anything, just start talking about the Second Amendment. And before you know it, you'll be knee-deep in the weeds arguing with a bunch of bubbas who believes that the Second Amendment means they're allowed to just go out here and start up a militia and fight against anything that they disagree with, and they believe that the Constitution gives them the right to do so. And people like that views Kyle Rittenhouse as a hero. And he couldn't even pass the exam to get into the Marines, which from what I hear is a pretty basic exam. There's a lot of simple questions on there. And Kyle flunked so badly he's never going to get the chance to try it again. Now, I looked up some of the questions for this exam, and this was one of the questions from the science section. It just said this: the principal gas in the Earth's atmosphere is, and your options are argon, neon, nitrogen, or oxygen. And then in word knowledge, I would have loved to have been a fly on the wall when Kyle talked about this or tried to answer these questions. It says, antagonize most nearly means to embarrass, struggle, provoke, or worship. I would love to know his answer to that, because he definitely embarrassed himself. He definitely struggles all the time trying to make speeches and answer tough questions. He's definitely good at provoking, and he definitely worships at the altar of Donald Trump. So I'm sure that he was completely stumped with that one. Then there's also quiver. It says quiver most nearly means to shake, dance, rest, or run. Kyle has done all of those things, so I don't know how he answered that, but again, he can't even try to join the Marines again. That's how bad he flunked, and that's the kind of guy that people think should be able to start a militia and just do whatever they want to do. Well, I'm going to take you back to an old clip with the now Secretary of State, Adrien Fontes, because he breaks this down and explains just because the Constitution says this does not mean it gives you a free pass to do whatever you want. Take a look at this clip, and then we'll talk more about it.
Hey everybody, Adrien Fontes here, Democrat running for Arizona Secretary of State, and I was a marksmanship instructor in the Marine Corps. I taught Marines how to shoot. Why is that important? Because I think there's a lot of people who don't understand what the Second Amendment actually means in context of the whole Constitution, right? Right. The confusion is I can just be a militia by myself, and a well-regulated militia just means what I want it to mean. That's not true. It's 100% not true. And I'm going to use this copy of the Constitution that the League of Women Voters gave me to show you why. Here's what the Second Amendment says. It's really easy. A well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. And everybody always says, oh, well, that's great. Well, what does militia mean? What does this mean? What does that mean? Well, guess what? Article 1, Section 8, Clause 15 and 16. Here's what a militia is. For those of you especially part of the fetishizing gun weapons kind of crowd, here's what it means. Congress shall have the power to call forth the militia, execute the laws of the Union, suppress insurrections, and repel invasions. The militia, in the context of our Constitution, is enforcing the laws of the Union. They work for the government, not against some tyrannical fantasy government that you guys are fetishizing against. That's not what it's supposed to. It says so right here. It also says that the Congress shall have the power to provide for organizing, arming, and disciplining the militia. That means you get your militia arms from the government. You don't buy them yourself. That's what the Constitution says. Then it goes on to say, and for governing such part of them as may be employed in the service of the United States, reserving to the states respectively appointment of officers. So it's a whole unit. There's discipline. They arm it. It's organized under Congress's rules, reserving to the states the appointment of the officers and the authority of training the militia according to the discipline prescribed by Congress. Congress provides the rules for the militia. Congress provides the arms for the militia. Congress calls up the militia. You don't just get to be a militia on your own.
See, I think one of the biggest problems is that so many people looks at the Second Amendment and the only part they see is the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. That's the only part they want to focus on, because they realize, hey, wait a minute, if we have to go back here and discuss this well-regulated militia part, Then we're going to have to get in there and we're going to have to read a little bit deeper, and we're going to have to understand who controls the militia and what the militia is called to do. And the militia is not to raise up and overthrow the government. It's actually to protect the government from people who are trying to do just that. So people have it completely backwards. And what I do not understand, and what has always truly baffled me, is why that any responsible gun owner, and I'm one myself, why would any responsible gun owner want kids to just go out and get guns and do anything they want to do with no experience or no training whatsoever? We require kids to get a driver's license to operate a car. They have to go, they have to pass a test, they have to, read the manual and learn how to drive. And I know so many people in my part of the world who has got into a fender bender, and it turns out it was against some kid, and they're like, yeah, man, these little kids out here, they just let anybody drive nowadays. I can't believe they let this guy pass the test. But they're okay with some kid just randomly going down to a gun show and walking away with an AR-15 and then going and doing something with no knowledge whatsoever on how to use it. But I want to take you back to a minute to Adrien Fontes, because he makes a great point as someone who is a former marksman instructor. Look at the manual that he used to teach Marines how to use these type of weapons, and then say to yourself, where was Kyle Rittenhouse's training on any of this? Take a look at this.
Why am I passionate about this? Why do I know about this? Not just because I'm running for Secretary of State and ran an election in Maricopa County right here in Arizona, but because back when I was in Yuma as an active duty Marine, I was a marksmanship instructor. Digging through some stuff, I found this manual that I used to use, this giant thick manual that Marines use to train each other on how to fire weapons. I mean, look at this thing. This is what we had to teach Marines. It's a 2-week course. Marines have to go through this every single year to be qualified to shoot with the M16A2 service rifle, which is like the AR-15. But an 18-year-old in the United States of America, an 18-year-old doesn't have to go through any of that training, can go grab an AR-15 and do damage like they've done and murder kids in classrooms like they've done.
So the Marines who are trained to defend this country has to study from a manual like that. And you're okay with some random kid just going to a gun show and picking up a gun and going home with it with no experience whatsoever? You're okay with just any kid out there deciding that he wants to play vigilante? In what world does that make sense? A lot of people can say, well, he had every right to defend himself, or he can rise up and do whatever he wants to do. Well, when you give someone like that a pass, then you're giving everyone that pass. And do you really want uneducated idiots walking around with that type of high-capacity weapon? What sense does that make? We get more bent out of shape over kids that don't have insurance on cars than we do kids that goes out and buys guns. And every time we read these manifestos, it's some disgruntled kid or some disgruntled white guy who bought into all the talking points of Fox News and believed that they were being erased from history and believed that everyone on the left was coming for their way of life. They sit back and they listen to these conspiracy theories. They sit back and they listen to this propaganda, and it gets pushed and pushed. And people around here just clutches onto their guns so hard and won't let them go while kids are dying all around us. And when you try to talk about any common sense gun laws or talk about banning assault weapons or anything like that, you get told that you don't believe in the Constitution, and you get told that you're anti-American, you're unpatriotic, and blah, blah, blah. And it's so tiresome having this argument, because we understand the Constitution and we understand the Second Amendment, and there's more to it than just the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. There's more to it than just shall not be infringed. The Senate started with a well-regulated militia. And if you want to thump the Constitution and tell us, I'm a constitutionalist, I believe in everything the Constitution says, then dive a little deeper and understand what the militias were meant to do, and realize that just because you didn't agree with an election, or just because you got disgruntled over a protest was happening, does not mean you have the right to form a militia and take to the streets.